coming up next is Marc Pittman. Marc Pittman is like legit one of my favorite people in the world, as is his wife. And they actually, his wife actually made a quilt for my daughter that she literally looks at and holds onto and goes into a blanket for it every single day. So Marc is legit one of my favorite people. But not only that, but he's brilliant. He is the author of the Surprising Gift of Doubt, which is a phenomenal book on leadership. You will, if you go to the Amazon page, you will see my pretty face holding up the book. I bought 2 copies, one for me and one to give to someone. It's a great book. Marc, thank you for coming to my launch event.
Thanks for letting me. This is great.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was actually very much inspired by you because you did a launch event as well for your book, right?
Yeah, I did. And you know who inspired that?
Who?
My wife, Emily.
Oh God, she's so good.
She's
right?
so good.
She's just like at the core of all the good things.
You know, she's so good. We hired her this year. So we doubled our staff.
Oh,
yeah.
right on.
So January 1st. Yeah.
Good things then. That's fantastic. All right. Well, you and I are going to be talking about goals today. So I'm pretty excited about this. The most obvious place to start would be SMART goals, but I feel like we can do more than that. So before we even get into it, talk to us a little bit about what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. And you just wrote a book that I would say is a book on leadership, The Surprising Gift of Doubt. It's really about leaders and the benefit of them actually not knowing things, and how there's these, you laid out a really beautiful like quadrant of how you can move from, you know, one of the different quadrants to, is it the bottom right or the top right? That's the one you want to go to. Forget.
Well, top right,
right.
Yeah, but
yeah,
bottom right is the quadrant 3 is where all the magic happens.
Yes. Yeah. So point being, phenomenal book. Everyone read it. I have a couple copies right next to me. Tell us about what you do day to day and why I had you on to come and talk about goals.
Well, I help leaders that are in doubt, people that have had success in their past, and everybody else thinks that they've got confidence in the leader because of the success in their past, but the leader knows, kind of just making this up as I go along. I don't really, you know, they're so aware of their own doubt that I help them see what the doubt might be saying. Instead of saying, hey, you're broken, you're a failure, you don't have it together, it could be the doubt is saying you're different, you're unique, you're exactly the type of leader this organization needs, you're exactly the voice this sector needs to hear. And so as an executive coach and trainer and speaker, I get to help people on that journey. It is so much fun, Jeff. It is such a blast.
I love being in conversations of consequence, and I know that you do too. So you're dealing with people who are trying to accomplish big things, a lot of them racked by doubt. And, you know, that's the big secret that I think no one talks about enough, but like, we are all making this up as we go along.
Yeah. You know, so to that point, in my mid-40s, I called my dad. I have 3 amazing kids because they are amazing anyway. Other people tell us that too, but I believe it. But I called my dad up and I said, Dad, you were just making this up as you went along, right? Because I realized around 45 is when I have like this image of dad having it figured out.
Oh yeah.
He knew what he was doing. He was rocking and rolling. He was dad. He was business person. He was all the things. And I didn't. And I realized he probably didn't either.
I had a similar thought the other day. It's going to sound really silly. It was actually last night. I made tuna casserole last night for dinner, which by the way, is delicious if you make it well. But
chips on the top or no chips?
Breadcrumbs, toasted panko breadcrumbs and butter, and some fried shallots. I went a little nuts.
Highfalutin.
I mean, I'm pretty highfalutin as a dude. But my point is, as I was driving home and I was in my head, I was planning out how I was going to make it and the different steps. I thought to myself, why do I like tuna casserole? And I thought my mom made it. And then I realized she was just putting her heart into making food each and every night. My wife just said it's so tasty.
I saw that.
It really was really good.
It was tasty.
But I thought to myself, like, you know, I used to think, you know, when you're a kid, like you think your parents were born at the age that you were born, right? Like you think that they started at 30 something, right? And then you get to their age and you're like, holy crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think the same thing is true in business. It's like, we see the leaders when we first come into work and we're like, oh, they obviously know everything that's going on with the business. I think this whole thing is held together with duct tape. And most of the time people have absolutely no idea what is going on and we're making up as we go along.
And kind of the pandemic helped show that.
Yes.
Because when all the norms were taken out, everybody just kind of everybody's hair was on fire. Yep. And that's when you could see the leaders that had some sort of foundation and the leaders that just didn't have a foundation at all. Some of them still were in the hustle culture. We're going to fake it till we make it, beat on the chest and all this stuff. But there were some that were able to have this both and. They were able to tell their team, we don't know the future and we're going to get there together as much as we can. And some, we may
Yeah.
have to let people go, but here are the values that we're going to be making the decisions on. And that's phenomenal. And hopefully we'll have that as a marker going forward. But
Yeah.
you're right about faking it, or not faking it, but thinking we had to make, like, we figured out leaders. It's not safe as a leader to just have, you have to have some sort of mask up at some points. I believe you have
Yeah.
to have some sort of armor, because not everybody's safe. Some people are gunning for you, some people are toxic, and some people just need stability, and they don't. You're in leadership and see all the uncertainty, but that's not necessarily always appropriate to share with everyone else. Not that you're being duplicitous or lacking integrity. You're just protecting the people around you and helping.
Yeah.
You're leading. But when you look at other people, you don't see all the chasms of doubt and the inner critics and all that other stuff that they're dealing with. You just see the mask or the placid look on the outside. So that's where I think one of the amazing things as a coach, and you experience this too, is being able to just be that safe space for someone. I'm not going to hire you. I'm not going to fire you. Just let's verbally process. Let's figure this out. Let's
Yeah.
talk through some things, and I'll tell you if you're crazy or not. But it's not going to risk your job. You're not going to risk the missing payroll again because you're verbally processing this. You're talking with a coach who has experience and is able to guide or shift or give different perspective.
Yeah, and you brought up something interesting. You talked about how, in the midst of this pandemic, we kind of saw the house of cards fall a little bit here and there, and it's the ones with a strong foundation that were still left. I would argue that I think the strong foundation there is cultures that develop people and that have a strong sense of purpose, a real mission. And I think, we're here to talk about goals, but before we even get into the conversation about goals, goals have to be in service of something.
Yes.
So, how do you go about working with leaders, and how important do you think it is to establish that bigger purpose, that bigger mission, that bigger thing that you're after, that the goals are in service of? How do you go about doing that? And how important is that?
It's totally, well, fundamentally, it's important. I'm a Franklin Covey trained certified coach, and I really believe beginning with the end in mind, knowing your bigger purpose, and knowing kind of why you're taking up space on the planet, like what
Hmm.
you're contributing to the life experience of people around you and yourself. But I don't think it's easy to get there. So I think sometimes we say, well, you have to know your purpose and your mission, and I find that that can be really daunting to be able to,
Yes.
like, I don't know. And, there's that whole, what if I get it wrong? And what if it's almost like the choose your own adventure books where
Yeah.
do you ever read those? So
And you're
I don't know.
paralyzed by the too many options, right?
I know. Do I go into the cave or do I climb the tree? Well, I'm going to keep my finger here because I want to go and look at what if I go in the cave. And so there's that fear of I might be missing out on something if I say this is my purpose. So I think one of the interesting ways of doing it is you can back into purpose, is I guess is what I'm saying. As a leader,
Mhm.
you can look back on your life and realize oh wow, there seemed to be a thread that ties this stuff together. Or you could list out, I'm a fan of listing out 100 things to do for the year, but you could do 100 things to do for your life, dreams, visions, pipe dreams, tasks. Just don't worry about the definition. Just get them on there, let it sit for a bit, and then look at it, and you can start seeing some themes. And sometimes you'll come up with, oh, this is what I'm about. And the third one, I don't know if you do this too, but also if it feels weird, it's almost like Googling yourself, but asking other people when what's their experience working with you,
Yes.
and that can be
So
incredibly
important.
illuminating.
Amazing, because it reveals things that you don't even think to yourself. It's interesting you brought that up because,
Or you don't
um
give yourself permission to think. You'd hope that you'd be this way, but you know you're
yeah.
not.
And when you hear it from other people, it's like you feel validated in that thought. But I was having a conversation with Tony Chapman when he was on my podcast, and he
That's
asked me,
shareable.
yeah, that is shareable, and it was on the mic swap, and he asked me what I thought my superpower was, and I said, I can't remember what I said. I think I was like, I'm good at strategy and good at developing people. He was like, I think your superpower is resilience. And it had never occurred to me that that is a
Wow.
superpower of mine, but he started listing off parts of my story that he knew about me. And I was like, "Oh my god, wow, that is an actual thing." So I agree with that. I think that for a leader to have the openness to let other people maybe tell you where your strengths are, and then I would say to go even deeper, what maybe your weaknesses are, would also be a helpful way of you growing and developing. So I 100% endorse that decision. And the point you brought up also about, like, find your purpose, like, it can feel so big and daunting. I'll admit that's a big blind spot for me because I've been so naturally in touch with why I do what I do for as
Yeah.
long as I've been working. So when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, well, just what are you about? Like, what's your thing? And some people that maybe the first time they've ever heard that question asked of them, and they're like, well, to make a living and,
Oh my
have a
goodness.
family and this and that. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, what drives you? Like, what really like
You
hits you?
are a brother from another mother, because
Right?
that's me too.
Yeah.
I have a copy of the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People from 1989. My mom wrote in there, "This sounds like the way you live your life." Like
Yeah.
I've just been, I've at a really young age, I realized I'm here for a purpose, and I better serve that purpose well and get out of the way of the other purposes. And I
Yeah.
don't, yeah. So I think missionally, I think so. Yeah, it's been interesting to notice that not only do not some people not think that way, which is, it's not good or bad, it just is. But there are people, some people don't want to. They don't want to think about the deeper thing. They just want to know, what am I here for?
Yeah.
What do
What's
you need me
next
to
up on
do?
my to-do list, basically.
Yeah, and some of that could be a lack of creativity and thinking, but it also, some of that could be just overwhelm. I
Yeah.
have too much to do. I just am used to putting out fires. I'm just used to playing whack-a-mole. I don't want to, don't make me take the step back. But I think when we can really tap into that sense of purpose, what I did for my company when I knew I was going to start bringing people on board back in 2019, I was inspired by two people, Tammy Zonker and Peter Drury, had done this session at a conference I was at, on writing your manifesto for them. It was for a nonprofit organization, but then they modeled it by doing their own personal ones.
Hmm.
So I started mine out with, what am I against? What are
Love it.
we? And that inspired me to be like, this is the fight I'm in. This is what I'm standing for, because I'm such a positive, like, there's always a silver lining to everything.
Totally. One of the
Like
things that
like
we
Kate
both
O'Neill,
connected
I
over.
could put duct tape around a cloud,
Yep.
to make it. So that was, for me, that was part of the perspective of, okay, I always believe in people's, ability and their potential, and we can see good things. Wonder what I'm standing against. And so that was really, I found that to be a really powerful thing. And it's particularly, you'd appreciate this, and Erica, you might too, when Emily reads it and is like, this is good. This gets me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that,
That's awesome.
yeah. What do you think you stand against?
Um, I mean, I think for one, I would say that I stand against just injustice in any and all of its forms. And I think if I dig really deep into it, I stand against the idea that anybody isn't free to be who they feel themselves to be. What
Interesting.
expressing themselves, how like whatever they're into, and whoever they're into, and however they want to present themselves in the world. I think you should be free to do that. As long as you're not harming anybody else, you should be able to
Mm,
be whoever you want to be in this world. And I think that extends to our work as well. I think that it's a shame that in this world you sometimes have to do a job that doesn't feed your soul, and or at least that
interesting.
even if you do, that you don't necessarily have the time outside of that role to
Okay.
do things that are meaningful and important to you, right? Like the point is that this is a gift that we have, this existence, this consciousness, this time we have here. What will you do with this one precious life you've been given, right? Like that mentality for me is so tangible because of the experiences in my life, that I see this life as being something that we should all have the ability to take full advantage
Mm,
of. So I think if you look at a lot of my work, and I recently kind of broke this down, that there are like three pillars of things that I'm into that kind of level up to this one big purpose. And they all are kind of, I think, in service of this idea of like change the world to make it to live in the world that you want to live in, right? So heroic and lovable leadership is one pillar. Uh, Living a purpose driven life is another, and unlocking
mm,
human potential, because I want people to be powerful, prepared, and clear so that they can
nice.
become unstoppable catalysts for change. So that's like my whole shtick, right? So like and I'm an organization of one. So I get to say that
Right.
that's what hangs on J Gibbard LLC, right? But when you take that out and you try to like step that out into an organization, you're in a new leadership role and you have to inspire people behind a certain set of ideals. How do we go from this idea of some sort of a tangible purpose into making them into real goals?
Well, it depends. So there are some people that would say, if you Google goal setting, you'll find a million different ways to
Yep.
do it. And I'm not a fan of the definition as much as the result. So what I like to do is clump them to, like, figure out all the things that you want to do, and then look through your list and look for two different types. Look for the ones that makes, like, if I do this one goal, a bunch of the other ones will be accomplished, because it's like, I use the example of planting a garden. Planting a garden also involves planting carrots, planting cabbage, planting, radishes.
Yep.
So that could be it. But then there are the ones that, if you do it and the way I'm talking about is, I call it magnet goals, where you do the 100 things and then you go
Yes. You
through.
had this in your book, didn't you? I was like,
Yeah,
this
I
sounds
did. Yeah.
familiar.
And
Yeah.
I've been using it for over almost 20 years now. Part of what I like about the other part, so you look for the logical ones, but then you also look for the intuitional ones, the ones that kind of just spark something inside you, and they seem totally crazy. They seem to be way outside. I find that using logic and creativity, using fact and intuition, helps us to make the best decisions. And it's usually only in retrospect that we can look back and say, oh yeah, I meant to do it that way.
Yeah.
But it helps us maintain humanity and keep human, instead of just being an automaton that's being ground down by a system.
That makes sense.
So what I like to do is then create a map. So you put, what is it you want to accomplish, and then what's the date? Because without a date, it's not a goal; it's just a wish. Yep. And then listing all the things that have to get done with dates, and then the people that can help with them. I find that's something that a lot of people forget to do. Is we're not doing this alone. There are some leaders that I think it's probably newer leaders that feel uncomfortable asking people to do things for them, because they should be willing to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting used to asking respectfully for things to be done, or just organizationally, this is your job. We're expecting you to do this. But who are the people that can help you? Also associations, peers, and all that. The one that really was hard for me as a positive guy was, I learned Zig Ziglar was a person who drove it home. I'm sure other people said it first, but what are the roadblocks that you're going to face and possibly facing doing this? Life throws curveballs. So why not lay out some of them in advance so you don't get caught flat-footed? So if there are, server issues or people issues or any whatever the issues are, put them down. And then also, who can help you with that? Is there a tech person that you can work with? Are there a recruitment firm that you can be, or there, part VAs that can help you with different things? And then who's your accountability partner? I think accountability is one of the things that many people forget or don't want to expose themselves to, because accountability often feels like failing a test, as opposed to encouraging, an encouraging kind of, yeah, you got this. So many of us, when we have an accountability partner or a performance review, we feel like it's like, oh no, I'm going to get smacked, or I'm going to get in trouble, get sent to the principal's house. It doesn't have to be that at all. It can be somebody that's just making it so that there's a little bit of a commitment to yourself. You're keeping your commitment to yourself by getting this goal done.
So when you're thinking of this new manager that goes through this process, I think a lot of people struggle with goal setting. Like you've been doing this for like 20 years now, and that the magnet goals, and you work with people and coach them on goal setting. But so many of these leaders that move into this new role are going to struggle with a couple different things, and I think you're intimately familiar with all of them. So I'm going to lay out a couple of them.
Okay.
And I want you to kind of talk us through maybe how you would coach them on working through these problems. So the first would be doubt. Is this the right goal? How should I be picking this goal in the first place would be one of them. I think the second one would be engaging the team, and how much of a leader's responsibility in goal setting involves them coming up with the goals and like going through their process to figure out what the goal should be, versus engaging their team and co-creating the goals. Is there a split to it? Do you have to read the terrain? Is it always one or the other? Like, how do you go about navigating that? Because, you've been doing it as long as you have. Picture a brand new manager. They got promoted because they were good doing a thing. Now they're in charge of setting goals and conflict resolution and strategy and all the different things. They're at the goal setting part. They're setting goals for their team and they go, I don't know what to do. So where do you start?
The first one on, is this the right goal? That is so challenging because many people don't have risk cultures that allow for risk or high risk tolerance. And you don't want to mess up. So if you're asking that question, it's probably a good question. What I find is the people that get stuck in asking, I'm not going to start at any goals because I don't know if these are the right ones, are usually the ones that don't accomplish, like they're too wrapped up and concerned with getting things exactly right. And I found in leadership and coaching other leaders that there's something wonderful about moving forward. If you commit to a few, it's not that you're morally obligated to fulfilling them necessarily, depending on how you set them or what your reporting structure is. But usually it moves you forward, and you can see, oh, course corrections. We can change it this way. We can change it that way. It's what matters is knowing what the end goal is. What's your outcome? Is it so? An example could be, I want to commit 3 hours a day to calling prospects. That could be a legitimate goal, but I always try to get my clients to then say, how many phone calls do you want to make in that time? Because what I invariably find is that they don't keep their schedule because stuff comes up, people interrupt, all these other things. But in the next week when we're talking, I could say, well, how many? Okay, sorry, yeah, they come in tail between their eyes. Didn't do it. I didn't fill this goal. Then I could say, well, how many people did you call? And often it's the exact number that they wanted to accomplish. It just was messy. It didn't look as neatly divided. So a part of, this comes to, the first thing I think, is it the right goal, is getting clear on what's the outcome and committing to a process to trying to get there. That the motion, you'll learn more acting, done is better than perfect in most cases.
Yes. Get in the game.
It's not mediocrity. It's action. There's a difference. It's not settling for something. It's moving forward and actually accomplishing something. So that's one. The other part with the team, that's a whole nother subject. I think there's something to be said about inclusive goal setting, but I have seen it go really crazy because people don't all have the same body of knowledge, experience, or understanding of where things are going. One of my early mentors said the view is always different from the captain's chair. And he said most of his job in leadership was when he assumed a new level of leadership, he'd look around and realize, oh, that's what they were seeing. And so he'd go and start apologizing to the leaders before him. I didn't understand. I only had a narrow vision and I was judging you on a narrow vision. I see a bigger, like some people don't understand that you can't just throw money at marketing. You have to make payroll. Oh, wait, there's revenue we have to think about here. Oh, the money has to come from somewhere before we can spend it. So I think a part of a leader's job is to help set the parameters. Where's the playing field? Kind of, and loosely, like here's the soccer field or something. And then setting the guidelines for people to be able to pitch in or to think about where their goals are. I like to do this in terms of a strategic plan and then asking people, here are the objectives for the organization for the next year or next 5 years. Where do you see yourself in them? And you'll invariably find people are not necessarily seeing themselves in where their jobs are. CFOs may see, be an ability to help with revenue generation, which is awesome. CFOs are really needed in that. So it helps us as leaders get out of the kind of job descriptions that we hired people for and see where they may be life-giving and where it may be rewarding for them to be involved. So it's a nuanced answer.
It is, but what occurred to me as you were saying is that I feel like there's so many conditions that this rests on to answer that. So if you have a team and you want to co-create the goals with them, depending on how aligned that team is around the big purpose and the mission that you're after, depending upon how much safety there is for people to speak up and talk about whether or not they can actually commit to that goal, and depending upon the level of ambition you have on the team and whether or not you have the trust so that you can, enter into a coaching situation there where somebody maybe, let's say you want to sell, 100 widgets, but you ask the team to commit the goals and they say 50 widgets. You have to be able to have the team dynamic where you can coach and say, guys, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's a really interesting goal. What do we think? What would happen hypothetically? What if we doubled that? What if we were to go for that? Is that something that you think we could do? Is it out of control? Is that okay? Great. So it sounds like it's a little ambitious. Would you all be comfortable taking on something that's a little more than we think we're capable of? Understanding that we may not even get there, right? So like your job as a leader, even in inviting that feedback, might just be to see where people are at and to coach them through thinking that maybe they're capable of more than they thought they were.
Well, and everybody, that was like a mini masterclass in the Lovable Leader. You'll learn that with the scripts and the questions to ask in Jeff's book. It's awesome. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I only have a few minutes left with you. Which is unfortunate. I felt this way about every guest I've talked to today. It's like, oh my God,
I've been watching. There have been some fascinating conversations you've been
unreal. Like I can't even believe this, but, I want to ask you the final question that I ask every guest today, which is, from your past and from your present, when I say lovable leader, who are some people that come to mind? What is it that characterizes them in your mind as a lovable leader?
I have to admit, I had a hard time with this because I think of lovable in a different context than leaders.
Yeah.
And so that was, I wish I could ask you about that, but, so came up with a bunch of names, and the one I'm landing on for right now, as far as leader and lovable, is Bob Grinnell. He was an early boss of mine who saw my potential, when I was a student in college and then when I was in admissions, and he called me into fundraising. Um, Coached me and trained me up as a fundraiser, and then released me to another organization because he knew that the nature of the organization I was at, they would not promote me or see me as promotable until I had experience outside, and then chose to come back maybe. And even throughout, even after he was there to be a sounding board. And so I think it's not like a schmaltzy, like when I think lovable, sometimes I think teddy bear.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I love about your book is it's not,
Yeah.
it's about hard conversations and tough tactics and tough strategies, but not being a hard ass, like Angela was talking about earlier. It's not being a toxic bully.
Yeah.
So that's, so, and that, so
Well,
that's
I
why,
think you described it really perfectly because, the way that I would describe the lovable leader comes back to those three principles. And I would say, did you think that this person cared about you? I think obviously you'd say, yeah. Did you
absolutely.
trust this person? I think you'd probably say, yeah. And
Yeah.
if they set a big goal for you, something they thought you were capable of, did you feel safe pursuing it around them? And I think you would probably say, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So to me,
One of
that's
the
what a
best
lovable leader
things,
is.
and I don't know if this helps leaders that are listening, but one of the best things Bob did for me is I was one of those kids that came into the office and said, "What do I have to do to what responsibilities do I need to take on in order for you to be able to justify promoting me?" I never expected a promotion. I always asked for what more do I need to do? And it was interesting to have him tell me what the criteria was. And in that organization, there was the next level up for me would have been to have a staff member, and that wasn't possible in the department I was in. But it was just really good to have that kind of frank conversation. And I knew that it wasn't just made up. There were
Yeah.
formulas or thought processes that justify different salary levels. And he's the only person I think that I've had that conversation with, but I wish more people would, because it takes the mystery out of it.
Yeah, and he created a space for you to do that, which is, I think, our job as leaders. We talked earlier today about safety and about trust and about communication, about
Yeah.
care. And I think if, every single interaction you have with a member of your team starts to build out your brand, for lack of a better term, or what type of a leader you are. Really, at the end of the day, the lovable leader is a brand. It is a brand that you can live into, which is committing to care, safety, and care, trust, and safe travels. So the way I look at it is that every interaction we have creates the space where someone could come into your office and say, "Hey, I really would love to know what are the criteria for the next position if I want to grow into it?" Or, "Hey,
Yes.
I have an idea for something. Do you have a few minutes to talk about it?" Or, "Hey, something's going on with one of our other team members. I really felt slighted. I kind of feel like it's creating an environment where I don't feel safe to bring my full self to work. Can we talk about it?" And if you don't create the environment for that, you're never going to get access to those conversations. You're never going to get the opportunity to help those people grow, whether it's at your company or to go out and make the world a better place.
And for all the leaders that just said, "What the heck? I don't have time for that." That's leadership. That's your job, is to create that environment. I did a
Yep.
study with my master's of organizational leadership looking at boarding schools. The schools that told the faculty, here's the levels and here are the responsibilities that add to extra titles and income, had higher faculty retention than the schools that just kind of left it being like a don't ask, don't tell, and it's all secret, and it's, backroom deals to get
Yeah.
salaries.
Well, it makes
That,
sense. One of the biggest reasons people leave jobs right now is they don't see opportunities for development. And one of the best ways you can help them do that is to show them, here's how you develop here. Seems obvious, right?
I could keep going for hours. I know you have another guest, so I'm gonna stop. But yes, that is
Yeah.
can you imagine how much more purpose filled it would be for everybody watching this if they looked at each of their direct reports and said, "I wonder what their ultimate goal is." They're only going to be admit they're only going to be with us for a short time.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's not a moral failing. This is just probably the nature. So, what's their ultimate goal and how can we help them get there? I bet their employees would dig in more to their job when they saw that this serves a higher purpose.
There's that quote by Richard Branson, train people so well that they can go anywhere, treat them so well that they never leave. That I
Ooh,
think that's the move, right? I in
love
the
that.
book, I advocate that you think about your relationships with all of your team members on basically an infinite horizon. That, like, whether or not they continue working with you or not, you are going to keep this person in your life. You care about their well-being, you care about what's going on with them, even if their tenure with you is short. So Marc, thank you so much for coming on and talking about goals with me. I love talking with you.
Congratulations on your new book. This is
great.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for inspiring the launch event idea. I've had such a good time with it. And for anybody listening, please go and pick up a copy of Marc's book.
Please
it's called The Surprising Gift of Doubt. Yeah, well, that too.
I thought you were going to say, please pick up a copy of your book.
No, pick up a copy of your book too. Look, it's book buying day. Buy mine, buy yours. It's called The Surprising Gift of Doubt. It's freaking awesome. I've already read it. It's phenomenal. So please go and get it. Marc, thank you so much for showing up and for cueing me perfectly for my next guest, who is actually someone who has worked on my team. The only guest that I have who has been on my team, and is like a super special moment for me. So I'm going to say goodbye to you, and I'm going to say hello to her.
Okay, bye.